Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior HR professional and an entrepreneur who's worked for several other companies, Mr. Anand Bhaskar Meduri. Anand, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh.
Anand is currently the Chief Human Resources Officer of Adani Airports. He has also been the co-founder of Planet Ganges. He is the former HR Director of Microsoft India, and he's worked with HUL, Reckitt Benckiser, GE, SBI, and more. So Anand, let's talk about the human resources function. Today, if you look at the function, it has evolved very significantly. When I was, and I'm much, much older than you, when I started working, we used to have a personnel manager and industrial relations manager. Today, it's become the Chief Human Resources Officer. Tell me, how has the function evolved over the years?
I think it's been an interesting journey. While you've been kind enough to make me look young by saying that you're older than me. When I started my career in '91, all of us were called personal officers.
Mm-hmm.
When I first became a manager, I was called a personnel manager.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the role did entail a lot of administrative work.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely doing some mundane payroll as well as industrial relations work. Industrial relations not mundane, but a significant part of the job was IR. Managing unions, managing workmen, managing aspirations of workmen, and legal compliances and so on. But I think over the years, organizations have understood that there are two things that are absolutely critical for the success of a company. One is, and both actually end with the word capital. One is financial capital and the other is human capital. So somewhere as the stature of the CFO or the finance people grew in the organization from bookkeepers to financial analysts and partners. Similarly, I think the HR also has evolved from being personnel or industrial relations folks to HR business partners. And I think going forward, it has to be slightly different. It needs not be necessarily an HR partner alone, but it needs to be something like an OD and change agent. So I think that becomes more important as we go forward.
Very interesting. And, again, while speaking to many, many people from the function over the last 2.5 years and people I've known earlier, the role of the CHRO has evolved into a very, very significant role as a trusted individual of the CEO. You just mentioned that, the finance guy handles the money part of it, the equity capital or debt capital, and the HR head manages the people capital. My question is that what is the role the CHRO is playing as a C-suite executive in large companies like yourself?
See, there are two aspects to it in my mind. One is the role that a CHRO is expected to play, and there is a role a CHRO may be playing, right? In terms of what is expected to play, I would say that a CHRO is expected to be a trusted partner of the CEO. Also be someone like a sounding board, a person who can also even coach, question, challenge the CEO, right? At the same time, also be a person who is working very closely with the leadership team. Because I don't think a CHRO's responsibility lies only working as a trusted partner of the CEO. It actually expands and it has to be the trusted partner of the leadership, who are probably the direct reports of the CEO. That's a very important role for a CHRO. Now, in terms of how the role is being played, which is the second dimension, is many of us, humans that we are good in some and may not be very good in others, right? So it's a mixed bag in terms of what aspects of the role some CHROs are being able to play better versus where there is room for improvement in CHR. So there is always a gap between the cup and the lip for any other function. I think it would be true for finance, it would be true for marketing or any other function. But yes, in terms of what is expected, the former, which I stated, is absolutely what is expected of a CHR.
Very interesting. Also, based on my own experience, technology and analytics has become a very significant part of the HR function. What are your thoughts?
I think technology has been very interesting the way it's evolved in the HR function. Initially, technology was seen more as a productivity tool.
Mm-hmm.
You bring in tech, you're able to automate certain processes and make things look better. And gradually, technology moved into the space of intelligence. Right? You look at the psychometric tools that are being used by many HR professionals, whether it's MBTI or Hogan, FireOB, all these tools that are being used, or Belvin. Now it gives you some intelligence in terms of what are you looking for in people, right? There are multiple assessments like Conferry assessments, four-dimensional assessments, also that are used by organizations. So all of these add to intelligence. I think all this intelligence helps in some amount of insights and some amount of decision making for HR professionals. But I think technology is yet to get to a stage where it can take over some of the decision making or the routine decision making that CHROs are doing today. Whether it is hiring at the junior levels. Some organizations have moved into automated video-based recruitment tools, which have machine learning or AI-driven algorithms that are helping you make selection once you're able to assess people and map it to the competencies that are relevant to an organizational context.
Mm.
So there are very few companies. I think Unilever is one company that has made a lot of progress in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a long way to go for many other companies to get into the space of intelligence-based decision making that a tool could do. But I think that's going to be the future going forward. And it's also going to be a big change for HR professionals because many of us, and I include myself in that because I can't claim to be a preacher here, is many of us have grown in an era where decision making is seen as the empowerment in our minds. We think that gives us the power to make choices, or that's why we exist. And suddenly, when you say that there is a tool that is going to take away, say, 30% of the decisions you're making, it may come across as, hey, am I being disempowered?
Mm-hmm.
Or is my role being not valued? How can a tool do it? While I am required to be doing it. So I think many of us also as professionals need to grow. To say that, okay, if 30% goes away, there is another 30% that will fill it up, which could be far more value creating for the organization. And how can I, as a professional, upscale myself and embrace the newer ways of working? So I think technology, with respect to technology, it's been a journey for many companies, and different companies are at different stages of evolution.
Correct.
And that's what I've observed.
This is fascinating, Anand. But a follow-up question from that is that, yes, artificial intelligence is being used for new hires, because you get your psychometric evaluation done and you get a fit of the kind of person you're looking for. But are you also using the same technology for existing people?
That's a brilliant question, Ashutosh, actually, because, and I have to go back a little bit in time to my entrepreneurial days when I was running Planet Ganges. In Planet Ganges, we came up with this talent management platform, which had integrated set of multiple modules, right? And our pitch to the clients was that, when you look at your existing talent, you would actually go and say, hey, he's a high potential or he's a high performer. Right?
Yes.
High performer, I can understand because you're seeing actual work on the ground and then you're saying whether he's met his targets or not met his targets or exceeded his targets. But as far as potential is concerned, you have to look at a lot of behavioral dimensions, right? And the truth of the matter is that when one human being assesses another human being, right, there is bound to be bias, because we all come from a frame of reference. Like, my frame of reference could be different from yours. But when you actually use an algorithm would also use a frame of reference, but could use multiple frames of reference simultaneously to bring about a balance.
Correct.
Use Ashutosh's frame of reference, Anand's, and maybe 100 other people's frame of reference, because that's how the construct of an algorithm is.
Sure.
So the way an algorithm would assess people could be far more balanced. I wouldn't say neutral, but far more balanced compared to an individual's assessment of the talent.
Okay.
So our pitch to clients was, we've built this intelligent tool which will actually help you proactively throw up who's your top talent in the organization, your top 5%, your top 3%. And I was amused to see the amount of resistance from my own fraternity that I was a part of for almost 25 years before I became an entrepreneur, in terms of saying, are you saying that the tool will be able to assess people better than we could? I mean, how does a tool know this person better than I know this person for the last 4 or 5 or 10 years? So I don't believe that this is right and this is possible and we should even try it. Then we are replacing the human mind with a system-based intelligence. And the unwillingness to even explore the idea. I mean, I can understand as a, apprehensions, you know, but unwillingness to explore the idea was quite intriguing to me, and it was a good learning experience for me that how much we need to evolve as individuals, and it includes me. I mean, I'm not excluding myself from that, and how much we need to be aware of some of our own biases that play in our mind. So we keep using this word self-awareness, quite freely
Correct.
in the world, but are we truly self-aware? Are we even observing our own thoughts and what and our beliefs that are kind of eventually coming through in our behavior and our decisions, right? So that was very interesting for me, and since I'm a professional coach too, it helped me actually reflect, and I learned a lot, I would say, through that experience.
Fascinating. Over the last 4 or 5 months, I have spoken to two different companies, one in the US and one in Singapore, both of whom have been using artificial intelligence for hiring. And I'm just wondering whether you let Planet Ganges get away too quickly, to become a unicorn yourself in the area of using technology for human resources.
I would agree with you, actually. I can't tell you, I always think about, what has been, we always have regrets in life, right? Some are failures, you may call it, some may call it regrets. I think one of my regret in life, at the same time, there is also a huge satisfaction in parallel. The fact that I wanted to be an entrepreneur for almost 20 years, never had the courage to be one. I decided at the age of 45 to plunge into it and do it. So I remember telling my wife that I don't want to die, with this regret that I never tried being an entrepreneur, right? So I think to that extent, I'm happy that I tried and I stayed the course for more than 5 years. Two, the regret is, I think I still believe it's a great idea, right? But the interesting learning for me has been that there are lots of great ideas in this world.
Correct.
The key is about executing the idea and bringing it to reality and bringing it to life the way you are actually envisaging the idea. I regret that I wasn't able to do as much as I would have liked to in that space. Does that mean it's over? I don't think so. I think you always have another chance, and Planet Ganges exists. And I still believe that I still have time and probably age.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
I'm sure you do. I mean, I founded Guardian when I was 46. I sold it when I turned 60, and I'm enjoying myself with this new startup when I'm 65. So, age is only a number, as they say. But Anand, let's come back to you again. I've also been, fascinated with how all our HR leaders of large organizations like yours have adjusted to managing during the pandemic. I'd love to get your perspective on how working from home, mixed use, if I can say, some in office, some at home, how is that working?
So, I have a very simple theory that I often use and talk to my teams. I say people change only when they are faced with two scenarios. Yeah, one scenario. One is there's a huge upside for the change. Right? There's a huge upside, and people say, you know what, my life is going to completely transform if I embrace this change. Then the person will go for it. Or the second is when they have no choice. The pandemic actually brought us to a situation where people had no choice.
Correct.
To embrace the change. So work from home, has been spoken about for so many years, but never was accepted by most companies. But the myth was that when you work from home, people are not productive, they're not sincere, they would actually be, watching movies or, going out with their families and not be genuinely committed. And I'm sure there are people who may be doing that.
Sure.
I don't deny that, right? I've been in the IT world and I've seen some people in a movie theater where they were supposed to be at work, So I've seen that. But Don't everyone do it? I don't think so. I think, stereotyping it or telling that everyone is dishonest is not fair. 95%, or I would want to believe that 99% people are actually honest and sincere. There might be a few people who don't. I think it broke the myth of that productivity won't happen, because when pandemic struck and people had no choice but to work from home, right, and to find ways to run the business, people were willing to try new ideas, embrace new things, and actually it did wonders. I am actually amazed at the increase in productivity
Wow.
during the pandemic that has actually happened, including the second wave. I mean, the commitment of people. I also want to add one thing here, which I think will sound sometimes politically incorrect to add. People also were more sincere during the pandemic because they also had some concern at the back of their minds that if this pandemic didn't go away, if I didn't actually contribute and add value, even if it is remotely, there is a risk associated in terms of my job or my continuity. And you don't know what's going to happen, and none of us knew the future. So I think to that extent, it has also benefited. But I would still want to believe that like 99% people are sincere. The 1% people who may have,
Sure.
looking for other ways to get away from work, were more committed during that period. But I think it did prove a lot of myths wrong. A lot of myths, whether it's why even work from home for professionals like us. I mean, look at your Thilewalas and everyone using Paytms and Google Pays, and you're paying vegetable vendors through.
Yes.
Look at the digital adoption that happened during this period.
True.
So even during demon as well as the pandemic. So what is it telling you? People are far more capable of embracing change. It's just that they're not willing.
Absolutely. Very well said. So Anand, my next question, and for someone who's worked among some of the most marquee companies in the country, Microsoft, HUL, Reckitt Benckiser, GE, you have worked with many people across many age groups. And yet, this is now the age of the millennials and the Gen Zs. I'd love to get your perspective on how is it to manage the young people of today.
I think it's a lot of fun working with the young people. And to be honest, that's something that I have benefited a lot from, thanks to the industry I worked in, whether it was Microsoft or Sapient, some of the best companies. I think while you named a lot of marquee companies, I would say Sapient was one of probably the best companies I worked for in terms of culture, in terms of environment. So is Microsoft, so was GE, so was Unilever. But one of the best, I would still rate Sapient right up there. I think the best part about working with youngsters, and that's what I have learned, is one is they're very aspirational, right? The goodness is that they're very aspirational. They're hungry. They want to do something more. They want to do new things. They want to experiment. Second, they also have tremendous potential because these are people who are willing to try, right? So I think my experience working with people has been good because somewhere, even if I'm, what I am in terms of age, I think I still am aspirational in my head. I still believe I have a lot to learn, right? I think where millennials can do better and where, we have probably gone wrong from a Gen X perspective is, what they lack is capability because they have not done it before. So they've not experienced it. We acquired the capability because we've done that work before. It's not as if we're born with that capability, right? Now, my personal belief is that, if you want to work with millennials, I think the best way to work with them is to use the coaching approach versus use a directive approach. The problem with my own generation is that we tend to go into or lean into the directive approach far more quickly because that's what we have experienced when we were growing up. Our bosses used to tell us what to do and they used to direct us. We had to be reviewed and we were checked on and we were pushed and challenged and sometimes shouted upon and so on. But when you look at millennials, I think look at your own children. You go and tell your son or daughter that I want it done this way. They're going to first push back, right? It's the same person out there in the workforce, today as a millennial. So if the method is not working with your kids, how the hell is it going to work with your colleagues?
Correct.
Just that they're maybe a few years older than your children. So I think instead of telling them what to do, if we can, help them discover what they need to do in order to solve for the problem. They're curious. They are very savvy on the net and on technology, and they have an ability to figure it out. So I think a coaching approach, you know, in my experience, tends to work better. But the challenge is it takes longer and a directive approach takes. So some of us are impatient for results because we are used to a certain pace of getting work done at our workplaces. And that's where the conflicts emerge with the millennials. Because when they get directed, they feel suffocated, they feel stifled, they feel less valued. And somewhere when you direct them, you're actually indirectly telling them that you don't know what to do and you don't know how to do. I'm telling you, I know how to. And that doesn't work from a psychological perspective. And I think it doesn't work for any of us for that matter.
Very
So,
interesting.
so
But what a great response. What a great response. So Anand, I have time for one more question, and I was trying to decide what, but I think I'm going to talk about diversity and inclusion. And that's a very significant aspect that HR leaders are now bringing into their companies. So I'd love to understand first, what are your thoughts on inclusion? And number two is, what are we doing about gender diversity in India?
Okay, I think this is an interesting subject. I have a slightly different perspective from what is published mostly in the media.
Sure.
Right? See, inclusion is about, in very simple words, I would say inclusion is about listening, right? Inclusion is not about having a person in the room. We use this phrase in HR, for example, do you have a seat at the table? So I think it's the most embarrassing statement to make. I may have a seat at the table, but I may not have a voice at the table.
Correct.
No, I may not still have an opinion at the table, right? I think inclusion is about listening and probably seeking to understand, listen to understand what people are trying to say. And even if they're not speaking up, encouraging them to speak up so that you at least understand whether they have a point of view and there is something that they probably don't want to share for whatever reasons they may not want to share. I think inclusion is a conscious effort that every leader needs to make. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement there for us, right? Yeah, that's number one. As far as diversity on gender diversity is concerned, I think we are miles and miles away in this country. Okay. If you look at 49% women in the country or 49.5% women in the country, the overall population, and what you look at in organizations is about 14%, 15% at best. Some companies have hit 20%, mainly because they've taken a lot of junior staff as developers. I think the important thing to understand on gender diversity is about what will it take to actually help women actually look at be a career professional. We as men have not done a good job, and I'm including myself in that. Every time when I say we, I mean myself too. So I'm not excluding myself. We've not done a good job in appreciating and understanding what it takes for a woman to actually have a child, go through all the changes that are happening to her physiologically and emotionally, and at the same time, be career oriented and be successful as a professional. I think that piece, I think we as professionals, as men, have not done a good job.
Okay.
And I think that sensitivity is impacted. I think Unilever is one company, and I have to give huge credit to my ex-colleague and the current head, Leena Nair, who actually has brought 50% diversity in Unilever across multiple countries. So I think that's one company that has focused on gender diversity over the last 2 decades and got to a better average than the global average or the global statistic. But I think we have miles to go in this country, and because it's the mindset, it's a patriarchal society, so we think in a particular way, and it will take time to change. But I think as we get more educated, more aware, some of us, have to play a role in bringing about this change.
Wonderful. Anand, thank you very much. It's been such a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for your incredible insights on the human resources function and also a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur. And as you said very rightly, it's never too late to start, and who knows what we will see you doing in the future. But thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. A platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.